The podcast discusses the current state of the presidential race, focusing on Kamala Harris's recent surge in popularity. Ben Shapiro notes that Harris is experiencing a moment in politics, similar to what she experienced in 2019 during the Democratic primaries. He emphasizes how quickly the political landscape can change, pointing out that just 3 weeks ago, there had been no assassination attempt on Donald Trump. Joe Biden was still the Democratic nominee, and Trump had not selected a vice presidential candidate. Shapiro discusses recent polls showing Harris slightly ahead of Trump in swing states, but expresses skepticism about the reliability of these polls, particularly noting discrepancies between results in Michigan and Pennsylvania. He cites Nate Silver's analysis, which suggests Harris has a better chance of winning the popular vote, but a worse chance of winning the Electoral College compared to Biden. The podcast highlights the media's role in Harris's momentum, criticizing their rapid shift from questioning Biden's fitness for office to enthusiastically supporting Harris. Shapiro accuses the media of gaslighting the public and failing to ask Harris substantive questions about her policy positions and past statements. Shapiro describes Harris's recent campaign events, including a rally in Atlanta featuring rapper Megan Thee Stallion. He criticizes Harris's attempts to appeal to different audiences by changing her speaking style, particularly noting her use of different accents when addressing predominantly Black audiences. The podcast also discusses Harris's potential vice presidential pick, with Josh Shapiro, the governor of Pennsylvania, emerging as a frontrunner. Ben Shapiro speculates that choosing Josh Shapiro could help Harris appeal to Jewish voters and moderate her image in crucial swing states like Pennsylvania. A significant portion of the podcast is dedicated to highlighting Harris's policy shifts since her 2019 presidential campaign. Shapiro accuses Harris of reversing her positions on numerous issues, including 1. Reparations for Black Americans, 2. Police funding, 3. Immigration policy, 4. Private health insurance, 5. Fracking, 6. Plastic straw bans. Shapiro argues that the media is failing to hold Harris accountable for these changes in position, and calls on the Trump campaign to aggressively define Harris based on her past statements and policy positions. The podcast discusses the Trump campaign's current strategy and suggests areas for improvement. Shapiro argues that the campaign needs to move quickly to define Harris negatively in the eyes of voters, using her past statements and policy positions against her. He emphasizes the importance of timing, stating that the campaign has only a few weeks to effectively shape public perception of Harris before it becomes baked into the cake. Shapiro also mentions the recent departure of the Project 2025 director from the Heritage Foundation, framing it as a politically savvy move by the Trump campaign to distance itself from potentially controversial policy proposals. The podcast covers recent events, including the assassination attempt on Donald Trump and Israel's targeted strikes against Hamas and Hezbollah leaders. Shapiro criticizes the Secret Service's handling of the Trump incident and expresses frustration with the lack of accountability. Regarding Israel's actions, Shapiro praises the targeted strikes against Hamas and Hezbollah leaders as a badass move to reestablish deterrence. He criticizes the Biden administration's response, particularly Vice President Harris's statement calling for a diplomatic solution, arguing that such an approach is naive and ineffective against terrorist organizations. Throughout the podcast, Shapiro repeatedly criticizes mainstream media coverage of political events and candidates. He accuses the media of bias in favor of Harris and the Democratic Party, arguing that they are failing to ask tough questions or hold Harris accountable for her past statements and policy shifts. Shapiro also takes aim at specific political commentators, such as Molly Jong-Fast, for what he perceives as unfair or inaccurate criticisms of Republican politicians like J.D. Vance.